Okay, so welcome to everybody listening in and watching this webinar. I'm Dara Fitzgerald. I'm the Executive Director of the Fulbright Commission. And today we have some great panel members to discuss with you the options for people applying for professional awards through the Fulbright Commission. Fulbright Commission probably is typically known for an academic and cultural exchange program. And that means a lot more than necessarily just people entirely from academia. So this is an opportunity today just to discuss in those general terms what we mean by that. I'm going to present some of the award details. It's by no means exhaustive. I will say to you at the end that you should certainly take a look at our website, fulbright.ie. I'll shortly introduce you to the panelists who'll just give their commentary on Fulbright. They are Fulbrighters themselves, and they do come from industry, so they've had that experience and they know what they're talking about. So just to give a quick wave, I just introduce Conor Quinn.
Hello everyone.
Raymond Mcraman.
Hi everyone.
And Amelia Kelly.
Hi.
So in the course of, sorry Amelia, in the course of their presentation, and they'll just give a quick brief about who they are, so we don't need to necessarily go through that at the moment. But we will have an opportunity at the end to ask questions. And by all means type in questions if you have the need. Now we can pull some out just to deal with, or we can have the panelists look at them as we're going through the program here. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing my slides then, to start the process then talking about the scholarships for professionals with Fulbright. So, thank you, Sarah. So as we mentioned, this is a discussion of professional scholarships. We typically don't have a particular tagline that says this category. They tend to be shared professional awards with one or two notable exceptions. Next slide, please, Sarah. So in terms of the award application timeline, we are getting very close to launching this next series of awards. This will be for on August 31st, the applications will open. These are open essentially for the 2021 to 2022 Irish Awards. So what that means is that anybody going will leave at the earliest will be August 2021 up until probably June, July 2022. So there's an opportunity to set up sometime in advance. But the applications will open on 31st of August. They will close then on the 2nd of November. We're pretty strict around that time scale. And in November to December, they will be put out to reviewers. These will be professional and discipline experts who will be able to look at who will very much focus on your plan and the ideas behind that, and just make sure that they're of a level and that they hold water. And then a subset of people who've applied will come through the review and will be invited to interviews. So they will be in January to February. Interviews are, I can say, they're some of the softest interviews you can get, and tend to be about yourself. But they will be very enjoyable as well, particularly once you're finished them. And then in March, we will be making offers, and then people can start. The earliest we'd expect them probably to start is probably August in 2021. So in terms of what you can do, your planning is obviously, look at our website. There is extensive information there. There is genuinely a lot of information that you can follow through on. We would say to look at different awards, choose awards. Don't necessarily be in a silo, so be a little bit innovative, and I'll talk about that in terms of people going from professional areas as well. So be a bit innovative on where you think you can fit. There's probably quite a lot of specificity in some of the eligibilities, but outside of that, the type of areas you can bring to it can be quite broad. In essence, we do support all disciplines, and then we have some focus courses as well. So find maybe a course or plan a proposal and contact the host in the US. So have an idea for where you want to go. That's preferable. And research what it means to be a Fulbrighter. Fulbright, the ethos of Fulbright is very important to us. So the educational, cultural exchange, being leaders, bringing part of yourself in Ireland to the US and then bringing part of that back it's a very big part of the Fulbright program. So we're not really here to fund your specific research. We're here to fund you and your development. And you can register your interest now. Again, all of this will be through the Fulbright website. Next slide, please, Sarah. So the categories as they break down, we would have Irish Student Awards. They would tend to be postgraduate research and postgraduate degree programs. Then we have Irish Scholar Awards. They tend to be academic and professional, and they usually operate at level of lecturing or research based. And then we would have the Irish Tech Impact Award. They're very specific to Ireland. No other commission or 180 in the world actually run this. So we're specifically, we say with an ICT focus, but you don't have to be the ICT person. That can be somebody else that you're bringing your idea to focus on that. So there's quite a lot of scope actually to work within that program as well. We have the Irish FLTA, so Irish in the US as a foreign language. And the opportunity then is for teachers or other professionals to teach and take language courses in the US. So some of the courses about how to teach, and then they would teach Irish language. My apologies, just have. And then we, sorry, I'm just blocked there. Okay, so we would have the last word there, I cannot see. Last one. Okay. Everybody else will see that. I just need to move on to the next slide then. Okay, so the Irish Scholar Awards and the Irish Tech Impact Awards are probably most relevant for people on the call here. But it's fair to say that we do cover all disciplines, and we have specific sponsored awards as well. So all disciplines means what it says is that you can come from any area. So if you're coming from law or economics or arts or geography, history, languages, across the board, we are very interested in people coming from all sorts of different areas. If you're in hybrid areas as well, that's a very interesting area. We're very interested in crossovers as well. The Irish Tech Impact Award, then, as I mentioned, that's kind of focused on either you from a tech space, or you want an idea or research, or you want to learn in a tech space that you can interact with your US colleagues. Next slide, please, Sarah. Fulbright Sponsored Awards, then again, this is all available on our website, so I don't need to go in massive detail here. We will have a co-sponsored award with different agencies and groups such as Enterprise Ireland. You can see the first one there in innovation and business. Again, we have a lot of scope to define what that actually means. The EPA Award in water, climate change and sustainable environment, and the GSI Award in geoscience. To be fair, I think both agencies cover a huge range of activities. So, and they're quite interested in people coming in sometimes from left field as well. So if you have something that could be innovative or interesting in that area, don't necessarily shy away from that. So consider where you might fit. So those awards for students and scholars. Student-only awards then are Creative Ireland and Fulbright Museum Fellowships. So we will have 3. There's one in Exploratorium San Francisco, another then in the Harry Ransom Center in Austin, Texas, and then the final one in Smithsonian, typically based in Washington, DC. And then we have a number of LLM awards as well for people who want to go and do a master's in law in the States. Again, I suppose to say, like the GSI and the EPA Award, Fulbright Teagasc Award, has quite a lot of scope as well, and I would recommend people when they're looking at that consider where they might fit on that. Part of a solution to finding out whether you would fit is to also look at EPA, EI, GSI, and Teagasc as well, so that you can find information for what they're interested in. The Scholar Only Awards, then we have a specific new one, Creative Ireland Professional Fellowship. So that's an interesting award again, and we're kind of focused on this, I suppose, on people who it's less research-based, academic research-based, but it's more based on people involved in institutions across a wide range of, whether that's museums or in theatre or other areas. similar to the Fulbright HRB Health Impact Award, while we do get a good swathe of applicants for that who are from academia and from research-based academia, we're also very interested in people who are running clinical programs, who run hospitals or parts of hospitals, and professionals in that space. So that award, those awards in particular are very designed for professionals in particular to apply for, but they are open to scholars and professionals. The NUI Scholar Award is for early career scholars. There are particular NUI eligibilities associated with that, so please look at that on the website. But again, that can be across all disciplines in that. And I mentioned the Fulbright Tech Impact Award, and they tend to be very short-term research, a little bit designed for professionals maybe who won't have the opportunity to go for a longer period of time. So you really talk about kind of from 1 month to three months opportunity to go and heavily engage in the US with colleagues there. So it tends to be an easier opportunity for people, certainly for the first interaction with Fulbright and this type of award. And we have a very specialist one, the Fulbright Tech Impact in Cybersecurity Award running for the last couple of years. Conor, Quinn will be able to talk about that a little bit. And that's in Boston College as it stands. We have been in Georgetown University as well, but it's only Boston College this year. Next slide, please, Sarah. So sponsored awards and open to professionals, I've kind of gone through those already, but I think I'll just say the EPA award and GSI award, they're interesting ones to look at. And then the other awards that we've just spoken about, I would say to definitely consider whether you would fit under the all disciplines or whether you would fit under the professional, those specific sponsored professional awards. And again, be innovative in that. We're quite open to that. Next slide, Sarah, please. So finding a host, sometimes it can be like it's not necessarily a cold call, particularly if you're dealing with academia in the States. But what we would do is to look at research experts in your field, reach out specifically to Fulbright Irish and US alum. We're always willing to help, you know, and I think our speakers coming up now will kind of will prove to that point. Use your existing links and use existing Fulbright links and connect with the sponsors as well. And ask mentors. Now, specifically, we do have, I think we've upwards of 21 ambassadors who can support you. But also, you will find that there are a lot of Fulbrighters potentially in your organization, or can be reached through if you want to scour through the Fulbright website, and you could look at existing Fulbrighters who are, you know, always willing to help. You know, they've had a good experience. Fulbright ethos, people do help. So there are many opportunities. If you're really stuck for a starting point, by all means, please contact the Commission. So next slide, Sarah, please. So again, the website is probably the first place to go to look at registering an interest in an award category. And then if you find one, if you do need a little bit more information, by all means reach out to us. We have a number of videos that you can watch that are very useful in the application process, and you can sign up and then in a particular process, sort of a more detailed webinar on the 17th of September. I think before you get to that point, please have a look at the categories and consider what you want to apply for. And the other thing is that do talk to people, because unlike many awards and maybe grants that people have applied for, myself included, you know, across academia and industry grants that have applied for, this is very much personal. So that little bit of extra work about where your plan is and where you want to go, it's going to be less about the technology and the research you're doing and more about you as a person. But again, to be more detailed in the application process webinar on 7th of September. So next slide, Sarah, thank you. So that brings me to the end of my presentation here. Again, this is all available. You can, it went through a little bit fast, and as I said, it's all on the website. It's really just to give you a taster. So I'm delighted then to be able to introduce and talk back and welcome back some of our recent, less recent, and very new Fulbrighters. So we have a full gamut here. Sorry, Raymond, where I'm going to put you as as the oldest Fulbrighter here, certainly in terms of Fulbright. But moving aside from that then, so in terms of the first person I want to introduce you to Conor Quinn. So Conor was a recent Fulbright awardee, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Conor, then to run through your talk. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Dara, for the kind introduction there, and welcome everyone to the talk on the scholarships for professionals. And I suppose, as it's been mentioned so far, my name is Conor Quinn, and in the 2019 and 2020 academic year, I was awarded the Fulbright Tech Impact Cybersecurity Award to Boston College. And you know, at the time, it was the first year they were doing that with Boston College, and I was joking with Dara before this that they're still doing it now. So I think it went well that first year around anyway. But I was over there for the best part of 4 months, and from August to December in 2019, and just got back in time before we locked down and all of that. Unfortunately, some of the other cohorts in my year were affected by that. So I'll just move on and give you a bit of background in relation to myself. I'm a UCD graduate, so I'm from a kind of technical background where I did computer science and cybersecurity masters there in UCD. And once I kind of finished my education, I went straight into the working world, where I've been working as a cybersecurity consultant for quite a number of years at this point. And I suppose the biggest question, and even in my interviews and even from people who hear about this, is why Fulbright and how I came across this. Because like I think a lot of people, you know, I think it's kind of viewed as an academia thing sometimes, where it might not be open to professionals sometimes. But luckily, one of my academic mentors in UCD for my final year project, who was a Fulbrighter, kind of brought it up at the time, and it just happened this one came up a couple of years later then, and that these are open to professionals, and they are looking for them as well. And I suppose in my case, I was fortunate where, you know, you obviously have to get time off work to go, but also I was kind of in a position where I might have been kind of getting that traveling bug and wanting to do something different. So, you know, this was kind of a natural progression where I was feeling, you know, confident in my skills enough to take on or apply for something of this magnitude. So once you kind of come up with that you want to do this and you are interested in it, the next point is, you know, coming up with a project proposal and choosing a host institution. And I suppose in my case, I wasn't, you know, academically inclined in the part of doing research or anything like that. So I didn't really have that kind of aspect to draw on. So the way I kind of describe it to people going forward is kind of, you can put a twist on it that you are professional. You might not necessarily know what goes into a research topic, but you do know everything about your field that you work in. So you can come up with a research topic that is really applicable to your field, that has real world applicability and can actually solve real issues. And that's not a knock on some academics, but it's not about a paper that sits on a shelf. You can really come up with some really great projects that have real world applicability in relation to that. And that's kind of what I tried to do with mine there on the screen. But in relation to the host institution, I know in my case, you know, this was an agreement with Boston College and a partnership, but I'd still give the same advice in relation to, you know, choosing the host institution, because I still had to look into see if Boston College was a fit for me and what I wanted to study and get into. So, you know, researching the people there, and in Boston's case, the professor Kevin Powers is well renowned in the States for his cybersecurity knowledge and everything. So, and their master's program over there is kind of a technical and management capabilities as well. So it was a natural fit for what I wanted to research and do. So I would echo the advice that Dara gave, that, you know, look into the college and why you want to go to that particular one. And I know it might be a case where you might see one on the television and want to go to that one, but I'd say choose the one that would be the best fit for what you want to research, and look at the departments and the expertise that are involved with it. And then moving on, after you kind of do your application and go through that aspect of it, and you're over there, what to expect. And I suppose there's two aspects of that. It's the highlights when you're there and the impact of it when you come back. And I kind of summarize that as, opportunity and experience. So over there, and it's been mentioned before, that the Fulbright, obviously the name carries such weight, especially within the United States and growing here within Ireland as well. And everyone recognizes it as a kind of a benchmark of understanding of particular professions and domains. So in my case, I'm only out of probably education, probably 5-6 years at this point. So getting the opportunity to lecture on master's program was probably one of the highlights for me. There was other ones such as, I got to spend days at the FBI headquarters with their cybercrime division, or MIT research groups, or a lot of kind of opportunities that I may not have come across with here in Ireland at this point in my career. But they have vast experienced staff as well. So I was getting to visit some of the companies that they work at as well. It was really great opportunities and kind of eye-opening as well for your own future career and progressions and where you want to go. And saying that at the same time, it's not all hard work. The Fulbright isn't about 9 to 5 sitting in an apartment or a library working on a research paper for X amount of months. You have to get out there and you have to have the experiences of whatever city or whatever university you're at. So I suppose in my sense, Boston was a big sports town, so I got to go to a lot of sporting events, and then kind of a large Irish community, so get involved with the consulate and other aspects there as well. So it's about kind of getting out there in the community as well, and kind of communicating what you're doing over here. And the impact of it is, obviously there's a research paper element of it. You don't have to have it completed by the time you're over there. I'm still working on mine with the research team in Boston College, for example. But the main aspect and the biggest thing I took from it is those lasting connections that you make. So I'm still in contact with the research team. I'm still in contact with people I've met over there in different companies, and kind of mentors to you as I go through my career at this point. And finally, just to sum it up, and a few tips to applications. And I know Dara already mentioned this in relation to speaking to other Fulbrighters, and it's almost kind of cliched at this point, but the other Fulbrighters will give you the kind of the context and what you need to know in relation to this. And as Dara said, we're all very open to sharing in this. So on LinkedIn, Twitter, email, cold email, anything like that, just send it off. If you have any questions, any concerns, somebody will help you out. And kind of one aspect as well is organizations that you're in, you'd be surprised how many Fulbrighters might be there, because this is a global aspect. So you may be able to get even in contact with people in your organization, especially if it's a global one. And my final point, and I suppose just to echo back about choosing that project, is to remember you're the expert in your field. You can come up with the idea where it's applicable, and make that real world application to your idea, and really make yourself stand out, and why it's so beneficial to get professionals involved in research and to solve real world issues. But that is everything for me. I know there's a Q&A at the end, so obviously feel free to ask anything directed towards me, but I'll hand it back to Dara now. Thank you.
All right, thanks a million. It's probably fair to say that you do represent kind of an industry voice from Deloitte now with, sorry, I can't remember who you said.
Accenture. Yeah.
Accenture, sorry, yeah, I nearly picked one of the others, so I'm glad I asked that again. But so thank you for that. I think it was an interesting time for you. We certainly got a view that you were well worked and they well worked. You got a lot from them as well. So I think it was very much a two-way process, and that's what I would say to people as well. It is very much a two-way process. You can give as much as you can get out of it as well. So the next speaker then I want to introduce then is Raymond Mcraman, who's been a long time interacting with the Fulbright program, and delighted to be able to bring him out again to talk about his experience and taking an industry view again as well.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Dara, and thanks, Conor. Yes, so I did my Fulbright back in 2013, 2014, and I did a research master's into wind engineering, and I'm currently the IFAA membership secretary as well. So in terms of the scholarships for professionals, I just wanted to go through a few things. So just to give you some background, I'm actually a civil engineer, and I worked for nearly 8 years working on large infrastructure projects, whether it was the Limerick Tunnel PPP scheme, the Clonmore Road Bridge, or I suppose the jewel in my crown in terms of when I was working in that side of the industry is Sikkeslagen. It's a cycle footbridge in Copenhagen. And it's just purely a cycle infrastructure, and it bends all over the place. And it was the only bridge that I actually designed that they actually decided to build. So so it was a nice one to get in the end. And then I went off to the States. But I suppose during the process of working in the construction industry, I started to become, I suppose, fascinated with wind, and in particularly wind on bridges, and how there were standards there for designing for wind in relation to bridges, but that there was lots of gaps. I noticed many gaps. So I started to kind of pick at these gaps. I suppose a little bit like Conor, started to get a bit of the itchy feet and willing to travel. And at the same time, this would have been obviously 2011, 2012. Things weren't necessarily happening in the country. So eager to experience new things. And the Fulbright, I suppose, offered me a path to that. So I was interested in wind. I had this book, The Wind Effects of Structures, and I had this idea that I wanted to do some research around this area of wind. So I actually took the book and I looked at, kind of the bibliography and the various people who contributed to the book, and I identified what colleges they came from. And I sent probably about 20 emails across the United States and to Canada going, I have this idea, would you be interested in doing this kind of research? And I would say 50% of the people never responded. And then most of the people responded with kind emails, some of them saying, we have a whole cohort of students, not particularly interested. Others were saying, very standard, we are interested, but you need to apply. And but one person in particular, Nick P. Jones, he's now the provost of Penn State. He wrote back to me and he said, "You're exactly the person that we want." And it was just such an inspiring email. So I actually ended up applying to Johns Hopkins because of that response. And I also applied to Notre Dame, Northeastern, and then to the Western University in London, Ontario. And I didn't get the Notre Dame, they were too full, and they wanted me to do a PhD, but the other three came back to me. And really part of the sway was definitely the response I got from Nick Jones, because it was such a personable response. So I think in terms of picking, I had the idea, but picking your host institution, I think having that relationship with the person that you're going to be researching with is really, really important. So make that personal relationship if you can, and talk to those people, because that was the defining thing for me. Now, as it turned out, when I arrived over in the States, Nick P. Jones accepted the job of provost in Penn State. So I arrived over to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and he went to Penn State. But what he did do was he made sure that I was looked after. So he set up other researchers, another supervisor for me. I actually got to work with the NSAI, the National Standards Agency in America, as a result. And Johns Hopkins is an expensive university to go to. The Fulbright Award would not cover the costs fully in any way or extent, but because I got the Fulbright Award, he was actually able to give me a fellowship, and that fellowship covered my costs. So Nick P. Jones, as it turns out, is actually a Fulbright. He's a Fulbright from New Zealand. So I think the people picking, obviously having a plan for what you want to do, but making that personal connection is really, really important. The highlights for me, so I went off, my original plan was to kind of do wind experiment, like wind tunnel testing and stuff like that. Because of the change of supervisor, I actually ended up doing computational fluid dynamics. So for instance, if you look in the bottom left corner here, this is Google Docs. And this is the wind blowing across Google Docs and impacting with the building and it going down the street, right? So this is the kind of thing that I do now. We model the world and we see how the wind behaves around that. And I suppose I'd identified kind of, before I went over, I'd identified that in Ireland, we tend to go to the UK or we go to France or Canada to get all our wind tunnel testing done. And I was kind of thinking, why don't we do that in Ireland? Why can't we look after ourselves? And by doing my Fulbright, I was able to come home and now I had a tool, I had a computational tool to do this kind of analysis in Ireland by an Irish team. And the building in the top bottom right corner, the EXO building, this is actually the first building in Ireland that was analysed, they had wind analysis done on it using computational fluid dynamics. And I was the person who did that, right? So the Fulbright allowed me to be groundbreaking in Ireland as being the first person to do this kind of analysis. And now there's a whole industry in Ireland that does this kind of analysis, right? So being at the cutting edge was just amazing and a real highlight. But it's grown beyond that as well. So I now do a lot of work on data centers, and not just data centers in Ireland, but do data centers all across the world. I've done stuff in Canada, done stuff in Amsterdam, in Denmark, in Germany, all over the world, using the skills that I learned while I was on my Fulbright. And I've also had the pleasure, I went to Trinity for my undergraduate, and I have the pleasure of actually doing some modeling for the long room. So recently it was announced that there's going to be a planning application in terms of the refurbishment of this room. I was involved in some of the analysis to allow that planning permission to go through. So these are things that if I hadn't gone on the Fulbright, I wouldn't have had the skills, the knowledge to be able to have these really impactful changes on the world. My advice for people for the application, I think Dara touched on it. It's about you, right? Everybody is special in their own way. You need to sell yourself and communicate why you're special, right? You can't be anybody else. You can only be yourself, but really sell yourself. It was the hardest thing for me to do in the application, was to say how great I was and how I was the perfect candidate. It really doesn't fit well with the Irish psyche to do that. But you know, you just go and do it, right? And you know, you don't regret anything. You know, sell yourself. The other one is know your topic, right? So, like Conor was saying, you are the expert in your field, right? So really, you know, tear and pull and stretch and pull at the topic and make sure you've got most of your bases covered. You probably won't get everything covered, but really think, you know, why is this important? Why do I want to do this? And it doesn't have to be, you know, something that everybody else thinks is important. But if you can convince yourself, you might convince the other people who are reading your essay or who are in the room when you do your interview. Distill your thoughts as well. If you can have a complex idea, but if you can break it down into, you know, a short few sentences so that, you know, anybody on the street can understand, that is a really, really good idea. And that's something that you can then sell and it could be a successful application. And the final thing is, I suppose there's lots of paperwork that has to be done. Between the Fulbright applications, the applications to the different universities or wherever you're going. And definitely organization is vital to just keep a track of everything that's going on. If I hadn't been, I was more organized then than I am now in terms of my application. And if I hadn't been so organized, I don't know if I would have gotten across the line. But that's it, really just go for it is my advice. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Raymond. Appreciate that. And I know I was saying you were a while ago. I mean, 2014 probably isn't that long ago, but but thanks very much. Okay, Sarah, if we can go back to video then. The last speaker then that I want to call is Amelia. And Amelia, you haven't had a chance to go just yet, but I think you've had an experience up to this point. You've had the Fulbright experience, and you've obviously started your engagement at this point. So as I said, the next speaker then Amelia Kelly, if you want to pick off your mute. I'm good to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Dara. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks to Sarah and Emma and all the Fulbright crowd for inviting me here to talk. Thanks also to Raymond and Conor for the wonderful presentations. I was saying to them before this began that I haven't made a slide deck, and now I feel quite underprepared after watching their wonderful presentations. But as Dara pointed out there, I am a Fulbright Tech Impact Scholar for the year 2020 and 2021. So in fact, this is the first month of my award. And with COVID and all that, I suppose the plans for actually going over to the States are a bit on the fence at the moment. So in terms of collaboration and that, I don't have that much to report yet, but let me start from the start and I'll tell my story of the application, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips about how to do the same. So my name is Amelia Kelly. I am working in the field of speech recognition. I work for a company called SoapBox Labs, and I am the director of speech technology there. So I suppose a little bit of background about me. I wasn't always involved in speech technology. My original degree was from NUI Galway in physics and astronomy. And I went on and I did a master's in linguistics then in Trinity College because I was just interested in it. And I realized while I was doing the master's in linguistics that it's an entire range of subjects that I'm all kind of sub-subjects that I'm all very interested in. But the thing that I suppose I was best at, given my physics background, was the more technological aspects of it, the things about signals and systems and sound waves, and how that related to speech and communication and that kind of modeling. So that's what led me to do a PhD in speech technology. After I graduated from my PhD in Trinity, I got my first job in America, and I went over on a J1 for 9 months to Silicon Valley. And basically this is the story of my transition from academia to industry, because it was a real eye-opener. I really like university. I love the research. I love the groups. I love the way the people are. And I think at the end of my PhD, I was kind of, just maybe wanting a little bit of a change. So to go from that research atmosphere into a startup was amazing, just the way everybody worked and the focus on actually getting something built. So I think it was Conor who said it there in this presentation, that there's a real value to be had in the technological aspects of research. So you can research an idea and you can write a paper and it can sit on a shelf, but there's also merit and value in actually taking an idea that everyone goes, oh, well, maybe that's been done, maybe it hasn't, but actually productizing it, putting it into a package that other people can use and gets distributed very quickly and scales up very quickly and can be used worldwide. And that's one of the reasons I really like the company I work for now. We build speech recognition technology for child speech. This is a particularly difficult problem because of the way children talk is very different from the way adults talk. And there's a big spiel I can give you there, but maybe I'll save it for another time. The fact is that when we're building speech technology for children's speech, other companies who are making platforms, for example, educational technology that would help children learn how to read or learn another language, for example, or even people in the gaming industry who are making robots who can have conversations with you, they can take the technology we build and package it up. And there is so much work involved in doing that and doing it in a way that's very creative. So this is really my background, and it all feeds into what eventually became my Fulbright proposal. So the reason I applied for the Fulbright is that I'm always kind of on the edge of academia, one foot in academia, one foot in industry. And I didn't actually realize that the Fulbright was something that professionals could apply to, and that it would apply to somebody in my situation who was really a technologist, I suppose. So when I was actually at a speech conference and I met an old professor of mine who is a Fulbrighter, and she mentioned it in passing. We were talking about it briefly, and like I knew that about her, and I kind of thought a bit more about her and her group and the lab I worked in Trinity, and I kind of realized that the connections she had made and the career she had built for herself, that the Fulbright largely contributed to that. And this, you know, I was thinking about my own life and what I wanted to do and what my career wanted to be. And I was like, you know, I kind of want to be a bit like that. And then I looked up the Fulbright. I came across the Fulbright Tech Impact Award, and I realized I was eligible. And then I signed up just for a bit more information. And then everything just happened really, really quickly. Within 6 weeks, I had my proposal drawn up. I had my institution chosen. I talked to various Fulbrighters about their experiences, and yeah, it was really a whirlwind. So I suppose, how did I come up with my proposal? That is closely linked with how I came up with the research institution that I wanted to partner with. So I was aware of a research institution in the University of Colorado in Boulder, who were working on an educational platform called TalkBack that allows teachers improve how they communicate with children who are learning maths, science, engineering kind of subjects, STEM subjects. And there's a whole kind of way of teaching where instead of getting the children to, you know, recite their times tables, you talk to them about what it is they've learned. There are different types of what they call talk moves, or academically productive conversational elements that will allow children talk about mathematical concepts in a way that supports each other and turns the classroom kind of into a learning encouragement environment where basically children start to think like scientists and researchers from a very young age. And what's interesting about this approach is that children who do use this approach to learn, generally it's very much more inclusive. It's not the kind of situation where you're pitting people against other people in the class, and those who really don't want to participate like that tend to fall by the wayside. This is a kind of a more equitable environment, and it's actually found to especially help children who might be a bit more reticent about being competitive in learning, children who are from environments where maybe academia isn't pushed as much or rewarded as much. And also for girls and minorities who have been told through media, through stereotypes, that who they are does not match with being good at maths, for example. So like one thing that really struck me was there was a study done that asked young girls if they wanted to be engineers, and they overwhelmingly said no. But when they were asked if they wanted to do things like save the rainforest or make clean drinking water, they overwhelmingly said yes. What happened was that the questioner had engaged them in the kind of wider, broader context of what it meant to be an engineer. It wasn't just the boys' thing, it was actually solving this mystery. And overwhelmingly, the girls wanted to be engineers after they knew that's what it was, or it was, obviously they knew, but when it was presented to them like that. So how does this fit in with speech technology? Well, the group at CU Boulder are building this platform that helps teachers listen back over their classes and decide or pinpoint where they're using these talk moves that help the class engage in this kind of conversation. The problem is that it relies on speech recognition to accurately transcribe the lesson. And where it's falling down is that when they try to transcribe the children's speech during the lesson, it doesn't work. So they're trying to use Amazon Alexa at the moment, and it totally fails miserably. So I reached out to them. I knew about this project already, and I reached out to them and I said, here, I'm a specialist in child speech recognition. I've been studying it for the last 6 years. I've been studying speech technology in a broader extent for almost 12 years. And this is something I really want to build for you and make work for you. And I suppose in my first example of how the Fulbright program will open doors for you, I got an immediate reply, an absolute next day immediate reply from the PI of this project going, this is amazing. This is exactly what we want. We can't get this to work. We really, really would love somebody to help us out in this. And Fulbright is so prestigious. We'd absolutely love you to come over and help out. And I was just really taken aback about how open and generous they were with their time. And I mean, I was just a stranger who cold emailed them, but the word Fulbright just gave it credibility, and they really wanted to work with me. So yeah, so I worked with them on the application. They gave me a really glowing support letter. And like all the support letter has to say is that you are welcome in the university. But the one I got was like, we cannot do it without this part of the project. Please, please, please let this happen. So I really, really loved that. And I was really pleasantly surprised about the reaction I got because of that. The other highlights and impact of the Fulbright application was when I was reaching out to other Fulbrighters. And again, whenever I reached out to talk to them, it would be a cold email. Hi, how's it going? I barely know you, but I want to apply for this Fulbright thing. Immediately, the amount of help I got people's versions of their own proposals, all the tips on what to do. I got information on when seminars like this were happening. I went to a few of them. It was really interesting hearing other people's stories about their Fulbright, and it really got me thinking a bit more creatively about what it was I was trying to do. And yeah, I suppose the only thing left then to say is a few tips for the application process that I can actually think of thinking about it the last few days. So the first is when you're coming up with the application itself, read other people's, read how they've structured it, and think about what you want to do. As the others said, you're the expert in your area, and you don't have to lie about what it is you want to do or embellish it in any way. If you are the expert in what you know and you're very confident in what you know, what you need to do is figure out what you want, how you want to use that to make the world a better place, for want of, sorry, it's a bit cliched, but it is true. My tip for coming up with the project proposal is not to overreach. So don't come up with a big, complicated proposal that will take months and months. For the Tech Impact Award especially, the maximum amount of time is 3 months. So not only do you have to come up with a proposal that can be completed in that small amount of time, but you really need to factor in the other things that you want to do while you're on your Fulbright, which is to talk to other people when you're in the university, to attend your ball games and go to lectures and give lectures yourself. All those different types of things, and to travel. I'm still looking forward to going over there and doing these things. But I looked at the first draft of my project proposal in preparation for this talk, and it was so big and unwieldy compared to the final one that I actually submitted. So I suppose my advice there is keep it simple and don't make it too complex. As a rule of thumb, yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say that's probably a really great place to kind of to move on to the next stage. I was just going to make some.
Sure.
First of all, just to thank all of you guys, the speakers here today. We really appreciate that you give back and you give forward as well. On that, there was a couple of points. I guess I just wanted to make. There's a few questions in that we get a chance to go to, but a couple of points that you guys all made that kind of resonated with me. And one was, a couple of you said that you didn't realize that Fulbright would support this type of program. And I've been a CEO of companies a few times and didn't realize until I became involved with the Fulbright program. So I'm very conscious and keen for people to understand that we do work with professionals across a whole myriad of, not just industry, but it's fair to say we do work with academia, but we work with the non-academics based in academia. So if you're a research manager, or you're running a center, or you're involved with those kind of components, this is an equal opportunity for you to apply. I mentioned the Health Impact Award, and again, we're very interested in people who are not necessarily engaged in academic-based research, but maybe structural-based or organizational-based research, those type of activities to apply to it. A point I always make is that there are no real downsides to applying for a Fulbright, and I think the successful applicants that you're seeing in front of you, are going to nod and say that, but we do talk to unsuccessful applicants and they say the same thing because they've learned a lot about what they wanted to do. So the application, because it's very much about you and you in your career and the things you're interested in, it highlights a lot of other things that are very useful to you. Conor made a very good comment to say is that you are an expert, and absolutely, you know, and you've 3 to 5 years professional experience, you know, that probably pulls you in through eligibility. You know, our current speakers, you know, they've come from industry and they're back in the industry, you know, and, you know, I think they're good examples of where you can be involved, you know, in what might seem like an academic setting, but actually is much broader than that. So the other point to say is that, yes, I think, Raymond, you made that comment, say that we do want to hear how great you are. You know, we do need you to talk that up. This is very much about you. So don't be shy or embarrassed or afraid to talk about how great you are. I can guarantee that your American peers are talking about how great they are, and they're selling that aspect of it as well. I do appreciate it in Ireland. We tend to undersell, and it's kind of, well, sure, they'll know I'm great. We probably won't. So come tell us that through your application, and if you get the interview, continue to tell us that, because that tells us about you as a person and how you represent out. So I'm just going to just move a little bit aside then in a little bit of time we have left to talk, to look at the questions that were asked there. I'm happy to answer the first one. Do you have to be sponsored by a university, and what other types of sponsors are eligible? The answer is no, it doesn't have to be a university. What other types of sponsors are eligible is probably a broader bucket, than it's an easier one to probably say that. We wouldn't specifically say that you go from, say, an industry to an industry. Per se, particularly this should be non-commercial research that you should be focused on. Having said that, if the industry that you're involved in are involved in a centre of research or have a program running or something that effectively does have, I suppose, an academic slant or a research or a thought aspect to it, then absolutely you can apply to that. If you have any specific questions, by all means contact us directly and we can give you advisory very quickly on that. The reality is it's probably going to be allowed. We probably would we can be reasonably flexible in that. But again, contact us directly if you want to, if you have a specific case that you want to discuss. Where can you find the previous proposals? Well, that's really, I suppose, in outreach to Fulbrighters themselves. So I would say talk to them and get a view before you even necessarily need to read through proposals, but talk to them about what makes up. Now, the seminar that's coming up on 17th September, we'll talk a little bit more detail about that as well. Is there a time limit of 3 months? That's for a very specific award. So we were talking about the Tech Impact Award, and some of the awards can go up to 12 months. So typically for Scholar Awards, it's 3 to 12 months. The Tech Impact is really just kind of 1 to 3 months. Student Awards are 4 to 12 months. We don't have any multi-year awards on the Irish, for Irish going out as it stands. And research managers from university fly, absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear enough, but absolutely. So research managers, non-academic staff, people involved in all sorts of aspects of professional, I won't call it professional development per se, but it's bringing some ideas you have or ideas that you would like to get experience with your peers in a US university. Absolutely, that's absolutely possible, and the same from a lot of other non-academic but professional viewpoints. These are applications to go. I would say if you're in any way in doubt, don't stop there. Come and ask us, and we can certainly advise you if it's worth putting the effort in at the next stage. We'll very quickly do that. Chances are it probably is worth doing it, and I think Amelia probably made a very strong case for saying that. You know, she only realised as she went along how applicable it was to her, and that how the framework can open up for her. So I could maybe ask if any of the panelists or Emma, anybody want to make an additional comment associated with the questions?
I just have the one comment on the on the time. So I was actually there for 2 years. Now my Fulbright was 1 year, so I had to figure out how to finance the second year, and that was largely done through the fellowship. But so I wouldn't necessarily put the time limit on it to be just a year. It's just that the award is for the year, and then you have to figure the rest out yourself after that.
We do certainly get examples of that. Sometimes people want to go for a 2-year master's, or maybe moves in a 1-year master's, moves into a PhD, or potentially the research project as an opportunity comes up. There is a 2-year home rule which is associated with the J1 visa. So at some point you would have to come back to Ireland. Now that's only mainly relevant when if you subsequently want to apply for a long-term visa in the States, such as a green card or equivalent. So, so just being aware of the 2-year home rule. Again, it really only applies to if you want to spend kind of a long period subsequently in the States. But if you come back and you spend 2 years in Ireland, then that's being achieved. So you've done your 2-year home rule there. I mean, as a comment, I kind of alluded a little bit there, but one of the companies that I certainly ran some years ago was a cancer diagnostic company. We have 7 EU projects all across Europe involved with research centres and companies, and we would have had probably 17 postdocs at one stage, and none of them were going to the States. And I think that's definitely a mistake that I made, and none of us realised that we should have been engaged with Fulbright or equivalent at an earlier stage, so that when we subsequently were looking to go to the States, we already had research partners and we had partners in the States set up. So I think early start of that process is good. If you're going for less commercial reasons, but you're going for more learnings and bringing back to your own home institution or your home industry, certainly look at that, because it's not just a technique or a program that you're bringing. It's actually the connections. It's the impact you have in the States. They lead to all sorts of other opportunities as well. Fulbright is very well known in the States. So it is very much seen as a prestigious, and it is a door opener for you, your country, your institution, your company, and the work that you're involved in, and an opportunity to be, I suppose, more visible as a leader as well. You are an expert, as Conor had said, and you probably know most of what's going on in your area. Sometimes it helps to just stand up and talk a little bit more about that and be comfortable in that. So we're very open to your applications. We would love to see an increase in applications. As I said at the very beginning, be innovative, see where you might fit. We and our sponsors are very open to looking at innovation as well, and where it might be, interesting to bring a different perspective from it. So that kind of, a more 360 view of a lot of areas is absolutely very welcome. And I would encourage everybody to apply. And I think we've heard from all the Fulbrighters who've been through this process who are encouraging you to apply as well. So I think, unless, Emma, we have anything more to add, we can probably finish at this point with 3 minutes to spare. Oh, sorry, my apologies. I'm just reading one more question in there. Difference between the Irish Fulbright and Schumann Awards. Sorry, yeah, it wasn't visible on my screen, but the Schumann Awards tend to be large-scale kind of issues that deal with the EU and the US. They open at a different timescale. They open in November, December through the Fulbright Commission in Belgium. They're open to Irish students and Irish scholars to apply to go to the States. That's in a cohort, though, of you're applying against other EU applicants as well. And same way that US applicants can apply to a number of different countries as well across the EU. So it's very much kind of an EU-US type of program. And you'll find more on our website, but also go to the Fulbright.be, the Belgian Fulbright Commission. Yes, so you can register again, just to reiterate, you can register for our application process through the webinar on the 17th September. I think the details that you'll be given will be a lot more comprehensive at that stage. Hopefully you've done an initial review, so it will make more sense to you at that time. What is the definition of an Irish scholar? So essentially we would take that as somebody who has a PhD. That's the typical expectation on that. But maybe as a professional, you can be viewed differently. So you might have 3 to 5 years professional experience, relevant professional experience. Okay, I think we're. And do you have to be Irish? You have to be an EU citizen living in Ireland for more than 3 years, or an Irish citizen by passport. That's our best definition of that. Sorry, I am holding on here a little bit because questions are just coming in as I'm speaking. Okay. I think there will be an opportunity for everybody to ask additional questions. If you register for the webinar on the 17th of September, you'll find out a lot more details. And I would absolutely advise go through to Fulbright.ie website to have a look at some of the videos and read through some of the documentation and have a consideration for what might suit. And again, go back to be innovative. And hopefully we'll see many of you through your applications, through the review and the interview process as well. Okay, thank you very much for joining us, and thanks very much to our panelists again. Okay, take care now.